Over the last 7 years, I've had the privilege of working with some of the best mentors in the game. And I can tell you without a shadow of a doubt, if you really want to level up and scale your business, you have to invest in yourself, your knowledge, and your network. Now, a lot of people talk about growth, but very, very few people are actually willing to put skin in the game. And today I'm going to break down exactly why investing in your business is a non-negotiable and how this has completely changed my life. I'll be sharing the real lessons I learned along my journey across all the mentors I've worked with over the last 8 years and how this investment's paid off for me big time. So if you're ready to stop messing around with your business and actually scale your business like a pro, stick around, make sure you watch to the end because I'm gonna give you my biggest hacks, and let's get into it. So the first mentor I worked with was Mark Coles, a chap from the UK. So I started working with Mark 2017-ish, 2018-ish. I was then working full-time as a estate agent. Online coaching was a new thing. And when I first went to Mark, I was selling cheap coaching programs for maybe £100 a month. When I originally started my coaching business, we were selling like Word PDF documents. The first ones I ever sold were about £40 a month. I couldn't even believe anyone would actually pay me money at that point. What happened when I went to Mark was he focused on actually with a couple of different things. One was he said something to me that I would always remember, that your content makes you look like a narcissistic prick. Maybe it still does, comment below if you think it does. And the reality is, in terms of what we did firstly was fix the way I presented myself. And then secondly, it's launched a low ticket program, which was called Shred and 8. Now this was an 8-week transformation program. The price was £99. And basically I scaled that up over maybe 12 to 18 months. Point we're having 800 to 1,000 people register every single time, every 8 weeks. I basically travel around the country and eventually around the world, give people prizes. It was £500 cash and a load of stuff from my supplement sponsors. And that worked really, really well to get me a lot of traction, get me a lot of social proof, and actually help me build a bit of a brand and a name for myself. If I was to look back on this in actually reflection, this wasn't the right move at the time, because what you actually need to do if you want to scale your business is focus on high-ticket coaching. And I'll tell you a lesson of why. And this changed everything for me. There was a client of mine who originally bought the £99 program. 2 years later, I sold him a coaching program for £9,000 for 12 months. He originally bought the £99 thing. He then bought the £9,000 one. Now, the reality of what happened after I started doing high-ticket coaching and I started trying to do low-ticket coaching at the same time is I realized this huge thing. If you try and sell low-ticket and high ticket, your low ticket will cannibalize your high ticket and you will actually make a lot less money. And this is why if you're actually looking to scale your business, and in particular at the beginning, where you don't have a lot of social media traffic, you don't have tons of social proof, you have to go into doing high ticket first, not low ticket. Now, my experience with Mark was really, really good, helped me loads, and I can't recommend enough of that. For beginners, it worked very well, but in terms of my experience, I would have gone straight into high ticket straight away, because it's the big thing that's gonna get you money quicker that you can put back into the business to speed things up. In particular, if you look now in 2024, there's loads of apps, there's AIs, all these things are free that people don't actually want to pay for the cheap £47 a month, £99 thing. They either do the free thing or they want the bespoke higher tickets thing with actual accountability. So if you're watching this, the big thing I would suggest is you go into high ticket, not low ticket. So when I worked with Mark, what I was paying was around £550 a month. I think they did it for about 12 months to 18 months. So I spent about 6,500 or so over that period of time. What I was doing in terms of deliverables, I could message him anytime I want. I went and met with him, I think once a month in person to go through things. It was very, very helpful. The reason I decided to leave to go to the next level is because I needed help with one big problem. And this is a big problem a lot of people struggle with right now, and something respectfully I'm world class at. And that's running Facebook ads and getting traffic. Because I had a product, but I just needed more people into it. So I needed to get into Facebook ads. So that's when I left Mark and I went to go and work with a guy called Shoney, who's actually based up in Glasgow. Wouldn't recommend going there, not a particularly nice place. But that worked really well when I went to Neil. So Neil basically sold a course originally that was £1,800. I bought the course, instant click and buy, easy as I am to sell stuff to. And then pretty much like 3 days later, paid for his one-to-one thing. Again, I think it was about £550 a month. I worked with Neil for about 18 months, learned how to run Facebook ads. We were running that on our low ticket offer, and it was actually doing pretty well then because ad prices were really cheap. And I look back retrospectively of, if I did high ticket coaching then on ads, I would have made millions straight away because the ad cost was so cheap, which is why if you're watching this right now, one thing I can guarantee you, the cost of advertising next week, next month, next year will continue to go up because of competition on platforms. So you have to get into these platforms now, have to understand how to market and also build an audience so you can monetize that. Part of Neil's program that worked really well, which I took a huge amount of value from, was he had in-person events that were 2 days in Glasgow every 3 months. Because I work very well when I'm put in a room and I'm forced to learn something. So I was essentially forced to learn Facebook ads every 3 months in person. And that was hugely beneficial. And it also created a cool network of people who I met. That was one of my first experience of masterminds, and in terms of a group setting, which is one of the reasons why I'm such a big advocate in those now. Now, from Neil, I left Neil because I had a good grasp in terms of how Facebook ads worked, but I needed help with one thing, and that was in terms of actual organic content, marketing, how to run promotions, and actually how to go and think bigger. Because at that time, I'd maybe become a little bit arrogant to some degrees. I was maybe making 30K a month. I thought it was a big fish in the world. This was 2019, 2020, and I had left my full-time job, which I left 25th of February, 2019. That's like my Independence Day. If anyone's left their full-time job, you will know what the Independence Day feels like. Comment below. Now, from there, what I did is I went to the US. I went to an event in Tampa, Florida in January. That was literally life-changing. And this is why events are life-changing for you. Not because of the event itself, but the people you meet there. So when I was there, I actually met one of my best friends now, who I message every single day, who I'm actually going to speak about later in this video. And at that event, I was put in a room with loads of other fitness entrepreneurs who were doing bigger numbers than me, a lot of relative similar numbers to me, and that was Vince Del Monte's mastermind. So I went to the event, I took some things in there that I literally actioned in the room straight away and worked. I was like, holy shit. And for me, this is where a saying that really resonates with me is this: money loves speed, wealth loves time. So if you want to move quick, you need to implement fast, which is something I've been really, really paranoid about. That as soon as I learn something, I'm like, how did I not know this thing? I need to do this right now. The most successful coaches I see have that exact trait where they execute like that. And they're not afraid to try something or take a risk. So I went to Vince's mastermind, and that was January 2020. And a few months later, I then decided to join their mastermind. Now, my business then started to grow pretty quick because of one thing as well. COVID was happening. And I think everyone remembers that crazy time, and the market was changing very quickly. So I started to learn how to run promotions. I was selling much more higher ticket prices. I also started building a sales team. And I was also getting a lot of guidance from someone who was coaching on Vince's mastermind, who's Frank Deblankin. Me and him struck up a really good friendship from when we both met in January that year, to the point we'd be up like texting each other, working like 4:30 a.m. And he'd literally like text me like, are you up yet, you pussy? And really be grinding together. At that phase, I was actually working in the shed garden in my office in the UK. And you wouldn't believe what that would look like now. Because in the winter, it'd literally be freezing cold. I'd have a woolly hat on, it'd be like freezing to death. I'd have a radiator between my legs. In the summer, it was so hot because it had a black flat roof on the top, had no air conditioning. And this is the reality in terms of what people don't see, is the grind that went on for years. And this is what I'm saying to people watching this video right now. I can compress time from you because this is exactly what's happened with me, with the mentors that I've actually worked with. So Vince's program was great. I took a huge amount of value from it. From the in-person event, was sick. I went to another one in Nashville, I think the year afterwards. And then the second big thing from that was the community of other coaches on it. And that's one of the big things I'm so driven about with seven-figure scaling systems is, yes, I know everything inside out in terms of how to scale a fitness business. But what you also learn from is your peers. As we have people in that community who are earning up to £300,000 a month who are in the UK as fitness coaches, and you wouldn't even know who they are. And this is the reality of you don't know what you don't know. And when you physically see someone who's doing that well, when you meet that person in real life, it breaks a lot of limiting beliefs. And this is why it's so important to be in part of successful networks. And that's why seven-figure scaling systems crushes it so much. So that's a huge thing I took from the seven-figure mastermind, which was Vince's business I had at the time. One of the other huge influences I had there was someone who became a very coach friend, was Coach Corby. Now, ironically, Coach Corby came to actually work for me in seven-figure scaling systems, which was around 18 months ago. And he had a huge impact on my life and gave me a huge amount of guidance, to the point that he came to work with us and he was the head coach there. Sadly, he passed away last year in a tragic accident, but he's someone else that took a huge amount of value. And this is where the connections you can create in different communities can have huge changes in where your life goes. Because one person can say one thing that completely changes the trajectory of everything. The last thing I touched on working with Vince, the big thing I loved about that was a huge North American community. Because people in the US, Canada, they have a winner's mindset and they like to take risks and they like to play big. Whereas a big problem I see with people in the UK, which is one of the reasons why I've actually left and moved to Dubai, is people have a very small, closed mindset. They don't want to take risks, they don't want to play too big, and I want to be all in and try and maximize everything I do, which in my opinion is really the American way, the Canadian way, and they try to play at a higher level. And they also respect people who really want to push it and do everything they can to get there. So I was on Vince's program for about 2 years. The first 6 months I took a huge amount of value from it. After that, probably not so much, because I had one of the biggest businesses in there at the time. I was making 150K up to the point where I left maybe like 300K in the second year, because at that point, the only reason I stayed to the second year is we have another business, which is called Closing Force, which is basically like a sales agency. We close for fitness businesses. We had a lot of clients who were in that mastermind, so I decided to stay for a second year in full transparency. From there, from Vince's, I decided to leave. And what I actually went to go and do is I went to go and work with someone who I'd liked for a long period of time, which is Ravi Abuvala. Now, Ravi's actually now become a good friend of mine. I spent some time with him in Paris recently, did a sick podcast, which you can watch. Now, Ravi, I bought his course, I think in November 2021, it was around $15,000. Again, standard Charlie Johnson, bought the course. We did some of the stuff off that, and then I went into his one-to-one program, or his high-level one that I think was $50,000. Now, the course material and the way it was laid out and the way everything was presented was sick. Everything in it was super high value and was very, very good in terms of the value you got from it. My only thing was it wasn't specific to a B2C offer. It's very good more in terms of B2B, like I do now, which is business to business rather than business to consumer. And at the time, I went into his high-level program, which is a cool story. The moment I actually decided to sign up, I was sitting in Canada in Lake Louise. I was in a little lodge on the actual ski slope, and I was like, fuck it, I'm just gonna sign up. Got my Amex out and literally just punched in the thing and just put payment link through and just signed up. Because at that point I was just like, what if? And did it get a direct return on investment from that mastermind right there and then? No. Has it paid off over a longer period of time? Yes, because of the relationships of the people I've met, because of the way I actually saw how the courses were laid out, for the information I took that compounded for me longer term, but I didn't see at the time. And with that, there's been a huge amount of things that have really helped us grow. One thing that didn't do very well from us was we originally took what was called a tech integrator from them, who was a guy called Jason, who basically came into our business to help run the tech side. He was recommended from them. That was a bit of a disaster, cost us maybe $70,000, $80,000. So one thing I would always say is I would be wary of placements that come from companies. That's not their fault by any means, but it's one thing in terms of you need to do your due diligence, that if you're joining a mastermind or mentorship and they're giving you staff, you still need to fully vet them and don't take everything they say as gospel and take everything with a pinch of salt. Now, Ravi's program was great. I decided to discontinue that because I wasn't seeing as much value from it as I really wanted at the time. Because personally, I was actually going through a difficult period. I just moved to Dubai. I was going through a divorce. So I had other things on my plate and we were trying to actually do too many things at one time. When I first moved to Dubai, I was like on the fucking warpath. I literally got a whiteboard and I was like, how are we going to scale to $1 million a month? I wrote out 15 different lead generation strategies. I'm like, we're gonna do all of these. I hired people to make 90-day email automations, to do webinars. We joined Ravi's top end program, did everything. And I can tell you for a matter of fact, it was a shit show. And the big thing I say to everyone now when you're looking to scale your business is you wanna focus on doing two things. And this is what focus on what's working and do more of it and do better. Max the hell out of that before you look to do more things. Because if you look to do 15 things suboptimally, none of them are gonna work very well. Because we live in a competitive environment right now and you have to maximize everything you do to actually get it to work and get it to be profitable. Now, after working with Ravi, I went to go work with someone about 6 months later who seems like almost like the godfather of the business and productivity industry, and that's Craig Valentine. So Craig has become a very close friend of mine. He is almost like a fatherly figure to me, and Craig helped me a huge amount in terms of the way I looked at setting goals, in terms of like actually a phrase I gave him for his business, which is called CEO Mastery, which is actually why we have our program is now called CEO Mastery Program, because he taught me the skills in terms of how to run a business, how to run myself, and how to get all these systems dialed in personally so you can get an organization to perform. I work with Craig one-to-one, and the funny story about this is I DM'd Craig being like, I want to sign up, I want to work with you. He's like, cool, this is how much it is to work with one of your coaches. I was like, no, I don't want to work with one of your coaches, because transparently for me, I want to work with the main guy, and I'm not going to listen to someone who hasn't done the thing. My whole thing in life is like, go to the person who's done the thing you want to do, pay them and learn directly from them, which is why you have to like walk the walk, and that's why like leaders need to lead. So if you're a fitness coach watching this, you're an entrepreneur watching this, you need to do the thing you teach, otherwise you're a lie, and that's why I'm such a big advocate of that. When Craig then messaged me back, he's like, oh, cool, that's no issue. You can work with me one-to-one, but it's 30K. I was like, okay, cool, I'm in. And literally sent me a payment link and then I signed up and I was in. So he closed me on DM on Instagram without even a call, with nothing, but just send me a payment link. And I'm an easy sell. So don't anyone try and sell my business coaching after this. When you're looking to work with a mentor, who have they worked with previously? Who are their success stories? Have they achieved the things you want to achieve? If they haven't, then it's probably not the type of person you should be working with. So Craig was phenomenal, really helped me in terms of just all aspects of life, and I can't recommend him enough for that. And then I've actually attended a couple of Craig's other events since. His events are really, really good, take a huge amount of value. And in this video, I'm not even speaking about the amount of money I've invested in going to these events, because for example, Craig's events, I think were $3,000 each. Vince's events were probably something similar. I spent, in addition to this, probably another $50,000, $100,000 in terms of going to events. But my experience working with Craig for the 6 month or so period I worked with him was phenomenally good. Now, after working with Craig, I then actually went to go and work and focus on one thing that's very important in business, and upgraded my skill set massively, which is sales. So I went to go and work with one of my good friends, Chris Spearman. He coached me personally one-to-one in terms of sales calls. So he was reviewing my sales calls, guiding me through them and focusing me in terms of how to crush selling. So then I had a stronger skill set and had the ability to then also teach that to other people. So he helped in terms of the front end offer, pricing, the structures, and how we did with everything like that. It was very, very helpful, and it taught me a lot of different frameworks also to teach in terms of how to manage sales teams. Because when you start to scale and you've got multiple phone closers, you're booking, like at one point, our fitness business, we were booking like 60 to 80 sales calls a day, which is insane. And then we've also got the Mastermind, the 7-figure scaling systems. I think we've got 18 calls today as an example. There's a lot of moving parts, there's a lot of people to manage, and you need to have the right systems in place. So the quickest way for me to get those was to go and find someone who's actually really good at sales, and that was Chris. So I paid Chris around $50,000, I think, for 3-4 months. We had an interesting performance-based metric in terms of how he was going to get paid. We obviously crushed the performance side of things, and it was money very well spent. And this is one of the things that you can see these amounts are starting to stack up, and how I'm constantly investing in mentors, but I've taken different things from different people. And this is because I don't want to be the jack of all trades. I want to be the master of all trades and have an overall skill set. So I know how to market, I know how to run ads, I know how to make content, and how to lead a team. And when it comes to leading a team, brings me into what I'm going to speak about next, which is actually someone I signed up on a complete impulse and had no idea of actually doing it. This has actually happened again, I think, about the skiing trip. I paid and signed up to this guy's mentorship 11 p.m. on New Year's Eve, sitting next to the Burj Al Arab, having a Chinese dinner and eating sushi, and that was Eric Spofford. So what's funny about this story is the reason I signed up, and you can actually go and watch this podcast with Eric if you type Eric Spofford, it's on this channel. I went actually signed up with Eric because he had him on my podcast. I was like, holy shit, this guy's really smart. He understands a lot of things from an operations standpoint, leadership, and just his decision-making ability. He sold his business for $118 million. He was formerly a heroin addict at 14 years old and was like put in prison, I think, at like 16. From that conversation, I was like, this guy knows a lot of stuff I have no clue about. The second thing I knew is Eric has a sick network. He knows like everyone. So what did I want to get a part of? That network and that community. So working with Eric, there was group calls, and I messaged back and forth a lot. And what I actually ended up doing was going out to Miami in January for 2-3 weeks, went out on his boat a few times, spent a lot of time with him, went to one of his events, and took a lot of value from that because he has an extreme amount of experience within different fields that are different from me. And this is where the higher I'm going up the ladder in terms of business, I'm not looking to try and learn things from people in the fitness industry. I'm trying to go to actual proper businesses where you learn actual proper business skills. Because if you're looking to try and take a business to like 8 figures a year, you're not going to be going to people who are fitness trainers. You're not going to go to people who are like small-time business coaches. You need to go to people who actually have big proper businesses. Around this time, I also signed up with another mentor who I actually mentioned earlier in this video, and that's Frank Deblankin. Now, almost signed up out of guilt because I'd probably messaged Frank every day for about 4 years, bombarding him with questions. If anyone was getting into that WhatsApp chat, it's probably worth millions and millions of dollars. And I paid Frank around $14,000, something like that, to work with him one-to-one for a couple of months. Big thing I needed help with was I didn't know what I didn't know. Business wasn't working how I wanted, and the reality of this was why? Because we had a dysfunctional team. People weren't communicating correctly. I wasn't leading them correctly. Organizational chart wasn't correct. And that's the big thing I took from Frank that I fixed. The second thing that actually fixed that big problem was when I went to Craig Valentine, my previous mentor's mastermind in Orange County in May. Bedros Keuilian taught me about what's called the FLIT. And the FLIT is a Future Leaders in Training. And this was a 20-minute training 3 times a week I did with our core team every 6 weeks. That helped a huge amount in terms of communication and getting people to work together. So working with Frank was a great experience. He's a very, very close friend of mine. He understands me thoroughly inside and out. I think he tries to provoke me sometimes to work harder. It does work. So that went really, really well. The last mentor I'm currently working with is a friend of mine who ironically lives in the same building as me in Dubai. And he also has just bought the same car as I have. And that's Will Brown. So Will sold his trading company last year for 7 figures. He is very, very successful in the online space. He's very good at running ads to VSLs and tracking and just different metrics. Now, what's good about this is he comes from a different perspective than all the other mentors I've worked with. And his number one skill I'd actually say is copywriting and promotion. So I've taken a huge amount from him in terms of actual marketing perspective and how to really maximize the traffic you have and how things should be presented in branding. So working with Will's been really, really good. Currently doing that so far. I've got a few months left with that. And the last big thing we've done right now is we've signed up to the inner circle with Adley. Adley owns a business called Viralish, which is basically a content creation agency which helps get billions of views. Their goal is to help basically double our reach in the next 90 days across social media, because the big thing we need is more traffic, and then we also learn these skills and we can also teach them to more people. And within this video, you're seeing the big common theme here. This is all about skill stacking, because you pull all these things together and it's like a multiplier effect. They all bounce off each other. So say, for example, with Adley, I learned how to make better videos. Cool, our videos are pretty good, our Facebook ads are pretty good. If I make them sick, and I'm also really sick at running Facebook ads, and I'm sick at running, like tracking the Facebook ads, we then have a superpower. We can then print leads, we can then print money, and we can scale infinitely, and we can then also teach people these things. And this just shows the constant reinvestment in learning and getting better to get to the top of the game. And the question I have to ask you right now is, when was the last time you invested in yourself? And when you have invested in yourself and it hasn't worked, why? Was it because you didn't do the work, or was it because the right person wasn't coaching you? To date, just these coaches alone, I've spent over $277,000 on personal mastermind and mentorships, not including events. So if I was to add that in there, it's probably easily another 100 grand at least. And this is what you have to think about, is not what it costs, but what it will cause. Because to date, we've sold over $12 million of programs online. And I've spent $350,000 on education. Pretty good return, right? And this is where you have to break down the base fundamentals of you don't know what you don't know. And that one piece of information you don't know could completely transform your life. Now, when it comes to investing in mentors, one thing is really important to understand. And that's that if it doesn't work, it doesn't mean mentorship's not broken. And if you're an online coach watching this, if a client comes to you and they don't get results, does that mean like online coaching doesn't work? No, it means it didn't work for that person. Maybe because you didn't get on for a certain reason, but maybe there was something they did take from it that still gave them some value. As I mentioned in this video, that there has been some mentorships I didn't get as much out as I could, which was partly my fault, but I took as much as I physically possible. And did it pay off long term? Yes. So one thing I say to you right now is, if you feel like you've been quote unquote burned by working with other mentors, that doesn't mean it doesn't work. It just means it hasn't worked for you this time. And this is where you have to keep taking shots to the table, but make informed decisions. And the biggest risk you have right now is not actually taking a risk. Because if you're stuck in the same spot in 12 months time because you didn't do what you're supposed to do and actually take the risk, find the person who can solve your problem, and think who, not how, which is a phenomenal book, by the way, you will never progress. Because the people who are at the top of the game are constantly looking to learn, constantly looking to get better, and you'll get left behind. There is no such thing as stagnation. You're either regressing or progressing. And if you want to progress, the quickest way to do that, find the person who's done the thing, talk to hundreds and thousands of other people, pay them to give you money, do what they tell you to do, you then get the result. And then you rinse and repeat. And that's what I've done over the last 8 years. Found the person, paid them, done the thing, gone to the next person, and taken all these pieces of knowledge that I've bolted into my brain. And that's how we built 7-figure scaling systems into the best mastermind in the world for fitness professionals. And if you're in a point right now where you're frustrated your business isn't growing, or you're not getting to the levels you want, then reach out to us. You can book in a call by hitting the link below this video. Now, this isn't a sales call. We will help you as much as possible. Yes, obviously we want you to try and join our program, but we will give you as much value as possible. So hopefully you can even make money to then come and join the program. That's essentially how we work. It's not a sales system. So if you hit the link below this video, you can book in a call. If you took tons of value from this, which I'm sure you did, smash the like button, hit the subscribe, comment below any questions, and I'll see you next video very soon.